Issues at Hand, powered by
Protea Hotel by Marriott Entebbe. Comfort and luxury at its best.
Oh yes, welcome back once again. I want to appreciate you for keeping it to Church of Uganda Family TV. It is now time for Issues at Hand, and yes, we are still talking about matters that concern our health. Yes, before the year ended there, we had someone from Consent. Of course, he came here and told us about what we can do. And surprisingly, during the Christmas period, so many of you were taken to hospital. And those were the things that we are addressing here. That was very unfortunate. But I hope those who were taken to hospital are not the ones that managed to view the program. But well, here today once again, I have Mr. Bernard Wambale, and he is the program manager at Consent. Of course, he's going to be taking us through the same. But now this time round, we are going to center on pesticides and of course look at the dangers of these pesticides. And yes, I want to, because of time, I want him to greet us first, and then we proceed with what we have to put out here today. Good morning, sir.
Good morning.
Happy New Year.
Happy New Year. Nice to catch up with you again in 2025.
For me, I didn't get sick anyhow.
No, you couldn't, because if you did, then our efforts would have been in vain. So, welcome to 2025. Our dear viewers, my name is Bernard Wambale, and I serve at the Global Consumer Center, Consent. I am the programs head there, but also I serve as the country coordinator for the Food Safety Coalition of Uganda. An alliance or a coalition that brings together different stakeholders that are handling issues on food safety in this country. Okay. So I'm glad to be here once again, and I'll be sharing with us substantially around the subject of pesticides. I know there's a lot of controversies here and there on pesticides, but we're going to explore in the next few minutes and see what exactly this is. Yeah, thanks.
Okay, it's great to have you once again here.
Right,
and now let's dive into that immediately, starting with the pesticides themselves.
Yeah.
Why are we using them commonly, and what are the pesticides initially, just to a layman out there?
Well, thanks. So quite a lot of things that we need to know about pesticides. Of course, we are aware that in the current era where we are facing challenges of climate change and the farmers are complaining, we are planting food and then we are not harvesting, and then so there's a lot of climate issues, a lot of weather patterns changing, and so we have seen a manifestation of pests destroying the crops of people, and then the diseases also come in. So this is one of the reasons why many people now have opted to using the pesticides. Okay. So pesticides, some people call it a necessary evil, that we have to use the pesticides for us to be able to produce. Yeah, so quite a lot of things that are now controversial when it comes to pesticides. First and foremost, as we dive into this subject, I want to say that government of Uganda is committed to ensuring that our population, or our people, our farmers, are actually, I would say that they are running away from chemicals.
Okay.
Your government is committed to think that, well, chemicals might be having a challenge. And so the government decided, for instance, in 2006, government of Uganda came up with what we are calling the Agrochemical Control Act. So why would the government come up with a control act for chemicals? It means that government knows
it's concerned
that there is a problem. Two, the country again in 2019 came up with something called the National Organic Agriculture Policy. Can you imagine? Organic. Meaning that the country, the government is concerned that we should be able to have farmers produce food without actually using chemicals. And so that's why the country was so much concerned to come up with a policy on organic production of food.
Yes.
Now, I want to throw you a little bit to the Constitution. 1995 Constitution of Uganda mandates the government to protect us, the Ugandans. This protection is not about guns. It is about the food we eat. It has even a whole chapter there. I think it is Principle 22 of the Constitution, talking about food and nutrition. Our people should have safe, nutritious, and adequate food. Okay. The word is safe, nutritious. And adequate. Meaning that the country, government, is actually very much concerned about this thing. Now, recently, there is an agroecology strategy that the government is developing. Agroecology strategy, meaning that government is still thinking that we need as much as possible to minimize the usage of chemicals. So by the time the government is coming up with an agroecology strategy, the government comes up with an organic policy, the government comes up with the Agriculture Chemicals Control Act, the government comes up with a constitution that is talking about, of course, we have in the Environment Act, and it brings out all these things very clearly. How best can we protect this? Now, let me a little bit take you to the Agriculture Chemical Control Act. According to that act, I have it with me here. That act defines pesticides as a chemical which, by virtue of its poisonous properties, can you imagine those words? Now, that is the act. That is the definition of a pesticide in the act, which is the act of this country. They say that a pesticide is a chemical by virtue of its poisonous properties used to kill pests in agriculture and forestry. Now, if someone tells you, the government tells you that a pesticide is a poisonous, who are we to start saying that the pesticides are not dangerous? If the government says that these are poisonous, that is how plainly it is written in the article, rather in the act. Now, I want to tell you that whoever is coming up and saying that pesticides are not dangerous, like I've seen in one of the papers, I think 31st of December, someone came up and said the civil society organizations are claiming that these pesticides are harmful, and that is a lie. And he says that is false. But this is the act. This is the act. A pesticide is a chemical which, by virtue of its poisonous properties, now, really, unless we are dense, if the government says this, who are we to start opposing? That is one. Now, the act, that act of the Chemical Control Act, provides for people who are supposed to use the chemicals. It even provides a board. There is a whole board at Ministry of Agriculture that is supposed to be looking into the matters of chemicals in this country. What is the role of that board? Regulate the chemicals that are actually coming in and getting out of the country. There is a board, whole board. And that board is even mandated by that act to come up with a technical steering committee, which is supposed to be guiding the ministry on issues of pesticides. All of that we have in this mighty country. We have it. We have a steering committee, technical committee on chemicals. We have an agricultural chemicals board, which is supposed to be regulating the chemical, which one not to come, which one to come, certifying people to use them. By the way, do you know that act says for you to use the chemicals, you are supposed to be an applicator. And an applicator in that case is defined as the person who has been trained and qualifies to actually apply the chemicals. Go back to your district and tell me who is applying those chemicals. Go back to your village and see whether you don't have a shop of chemicals in your village. Are they applicators? So what is the problem? So we need to speak about this thing, taking into consideration the issue of the law. What does our law say? And so if the law exists, why are we running away from it? Now let me give you another shock. By the end of 2023, Uganda as a country, we have an agricultural register, chemical register, at the Ministry of Agriculture. We have it. That we have also a similar arrangement at NDA, the National Drug Authority. We have studied all those chemicals. And I have even the evidence documented here. It's not a hearsay. I hope you've seen this. We have this publication. It is here with us. Now, what do we find out? That Uganda as a country has legally registered 115 active ingredients. 115 active ingredients in pesticides. These ones, of course, will include the insecticides, what they use to spray the insects, what they use to spray fungicides. We also fungicides, we have herbicides for weeds and whatever. All of that categorization, we have it in the country, well registered. 115 active ingredients. Now, these 115 active ingredients have been packaged or branded in 669 brands. So the country has registered 669 brands of these different 115 active ingredients. This is public information. Go to MyIF and check the register. They are there. Now, after giving you this breakdown of the chemicals that are fully registered, legally registered in this country, we have, as experts, we have different criteria that now we can say, okay, where does this chemical fall? Is it highly hazardous or it can be used? We have criteria.
Yeah.
One of the criteria is called the Joint Meeting on Pesticide Management. It's called GMPM. It's a criteria that you get a chemical before you start using it, put it to that criteria and see if it meets the criteria for usage. Now, this criteria is set by Food and Agriculture Organization and also the World Health Organization. That Joint Meeting on Pesticide Management, the GMPM, it's a criteria. Now, according to that criteria, out of the 115 active ingredients I've talked about there, 18 of them, which are fully registered in this country, according to this GMPM criteria, they are considered as highly hazardous pesticides.
But we are having them.
So if this is the FAO and WHO criteria that, hey guys, if this chemical meets this, that one is highly hazardous. Now let us use common sense. If someone says something is hazardous, what does it mean?
It's dangerous.
Now here they go ahead and say it is not just hazardous, but is highly hazardous. So according to the chemicals, the active ingredients we are using in this country, 15.6% of them, which are the 18 active ingredients, which are on the market, languishing in our market there, are highly hazardous. Now, those 18 in Uganda have been packaged again, branded in 129 brands. Those ones which are highly hazardous, according to the GMPM criteria. Now, let us leave that criteria alone. There is another criteria. It's called the Pesticide Action Network, which is a global, criteria. We also got the chemicals, which I've talked about there. 115 active ingredients in 669 brands. Subjected them to that criteria called the PAN, Pesticide Action Network. Surprisingly, out of the 115 active ingredients that are fully registered in this country, 55 of them, which presents about 47.8% of them, they are considered highly hazardous, according to the PAN criteria. Fully available in our market, fully available on our register.
So, okay, let me ask now. If they are if they are so much hazardous like this,
yes,
why are they on market?
That is the question. And that is the reason why, when I introduced the subject, I started with the policy. We have the provisions on which chemical has to come here, how they should enter the country, how it should be stored, managed, distributed, licensed, etc. We have. That's why I started with the Act up there.
Okay.
It provides all of those things. Now the question we are also asking ourselves, how did they find themselves on the register? Because my mother in the village will not know that this for them what they see is what they actually use. Now in this country, I want anyone to come and challenge us on this because the register has these chemicals. By the way, even some of these, they're also reflecting on the NDA register. So you'll find that when you get the NDA register and you get the MyIF register, what I'm talking about, it's even well documented in this report, fully documented there. Now, let me give you another surprise. That of these 55, actually the 55 active ingredients, according to the Pesticide Action Network, now for them, they have been branded. You see the way you are moving out there and you see Racket, Rat, those brands. These 55 active ingredients have been branded in 459 brands. 459 brands. And all of these met the criteria of highly hazardous pesticides according to the PAN criteria. So, when we start fooling the community out there, if I even see professionals, including some professors, confusing the nation, we need to be honest. We need to be honest with each other and say, okay, guys, we are not saying that people will stop using pesticides. There are pesticides that can be recommended for use, which are not highly hazardous. But we wouldn't also want to say that the country should entirely depend on pesticides, because the government itself is saying that a pesticide is a chemical by virtue of its poisonous properties. I want you to keep quoting that word, poisonous.
Okay.
Now, why would you give the community poison when you know? And yet your mandate is to protect the consumers. This is where now civil society is coming out loudly and saying, guys, why are we killing people when we are seeing, by virtue of your definition of a pesticide? Now, I'm even becoming humbler to use the word highly hazardous because I'm a technical person. Even indicating to you that we have highly hazardous pesticides that are existing in our framework here. Now, out of these pesticides that met the pan, 65.5% of them, that is more than half. So if you're talking about 55 active ingredients, just get above half. So you're talking about over 40 almost. We're talking about 65.5% of the active ingredients that met the PAN network criteria are not used in countries where they are made.
Okay.
Yes. All what I'm talking about, this report provides, but also after studying the MAIF register and all those registers, it is vivid. Personally, and the team at the Food Safety Coalition, we have studied the chemicals in Uganda and the chemicals in the EU. Now, Europe produces these things and they don't use. They send to us. For us, we use. Now, we go back to the basics of human rights. Let us go back to the basics of human rights. The human right remains a human right, whether you're a human being from Europe or a human being from Africa. Now, you have 65.5% of the chemicals made in the EU and are being used in a country like ours, Uganda, but they are not used in the EU. What are we talking about?
That's quite absurd.
The question would be, why isn't Europe using them? And if they're not using them, it means they are poisonous to their community, and so they are, because of their constitutional mandate, EU has to protect its people. Now the question is, isn't Uganda having mandate, the government having mandate to protect us? So why would we have then 65% of the active ingredients that are not being used elsewhere, and for us we're using them? So it means that on our market, we barely have about 30%, 35% of chemicals that are used here and there. So why can't we ban this 65% and remain with what they use, if at all it is an issue of human rights? Now let me give you another version. Having understood the active ingredients that meet the GMPM and those that are meeting the PAN criteria, now I want to tell you that according to these two criteria, these chemicals have been scientifically broken down in categories. Some of these categories of the highly hazardous pesticides that I've just mentioned above are considered mutagenic. Now, I will explain the science slowly. Mutagenicity or mutagenic in science means that if a person consumed food that is having such a chemical which has properties of mutagenicity, the chemical has the ability or the potential of altering or changing your DNA. So it can mutate.
Change your DNA.
Yes. So, and what is DNA? Genetic makeup of you. So when you look at me, I am comprised of a DNA which makes me me. Now, when I eat food that is having compounds which are mutagenic, I'll take it in the food, which is supposed to give me health, but that food, because of the compounds in there, those chemicals go and change or alter my DNA slowly but sure. So people will tell you, but we have not seen my genes changing. Yes, but every time you are eating in small amounts, keep accumulating slowly. At the end of the day, our DNA will keep on altering slowly, and we keep now messing up with the rights of people who are supposed to be having their genetic makeup whole. So who are we to start even thinking that we can have such a chemical on the radar here? I have a long list here of chemicals that fall under each of them. So that is one categorization. The other categorization is we have those chemicals which have been classified as carcinogenic. Now these are hard scientific things now where people, professors and what will come and confuse us. carcinogens are compounds that actually have been confirmed as cancer-causing agents. Meaning that if some farmer somewhere or a consumer somewhere has food containing a chemical that is falling under these carcinogenic compounds, it means that we stand a risk of eating that food and causes cancer to the consumers. No wonder the cancers are so many now in our country. No wonder the government came up with the Cancer Institute. No wonder when you go to the Cancer Institute, it is full that even some patients are sleeping on the floor. This is vivid. You go to Mulago and you see them there. That is even the same reason perhaps why now we see every sort of cancer is with us. Unlike so many years ago where people were doing the agriculture without anything and people are living well. Yeah. So this is carcinogenic. Now, a professor who was writing that article, I saw him quoting that civil society is talking about chemicals which are probable carcinogens. And so he was contesting that if something is probable, then it cannot cause cancer. No. Science, in this case, according to science, when you say probable carcinogen, it means that studies have been done on animal trials. And in animals, there has been proof that this compound can cause cancer. However, human studies are still underway to justify this. So I don't want people to be confused with our science, yet we can simplify science for people. So probable carcinogens are also other compounds in some of these highly hazardous chemical compounds. So we have a long list. We even have others which are called endocrine disruptors. Endocrine system is your system that produces or regulates your hormones. As a human being, you have hormones. When you eat portion, you have insulin being produced, and then it is supporting. We have all these hormones which are controlling our beards, our voices, and all those are hormones. Now, they come from the endocrine system. Now, we see that there are chemicals which are being used in this country, which are highly hazardous on our register, but they are classified under endocrine disruptors. What that means is that when you eat food having these chemical compounds, they have the potential to disrupt the system that works on your hormones.
Wow. This is a really something we really need to pay much attention to. I love the fact that you're breaking down the science for us, and it is really something everyone out there would want, because the terms could be so much complicated, but we appreciate so much. So we're going in for a very short break and return with more of this.
Issues at hand, powered by
Protea Hotel by Marriott Entebbe. Comfort and luxury at its best.
This is Church of Uganda Family TV. Enriching lives. Regulated by the Uganda Communications Commission. This is Church of Uganda Family TV. Enriching lives. Regulated by the Uganda Communications Commission. Issues at hand, powered by
Protea Hotel by Marriott Entebbe. Comfort and luxury at its best.
Welcome back. You are still watching Issues at Hand, and yes, today we are talking about the dangers of pesticides sprayed on agricultural products. And of course, this information is being given to us by Mr. Bernard Wambale, who is the programs officer at Consent. And yes, he has elaborated very, very well what pesticides are, and of course, even the legal perspective of it here in the country. And surprised to see that we have products here or chemicals that are manufactured from that side of Europe. But then they do not use them, but we are very comfortable and using them on our wonderful agricultural produce here on the nation. So it is quite, it is funny, but well, this first and foremost, if you're to look at the issue of them being banned, the other side, not to be used, but then you're using them here, is something we really want to. Yeah. This is just common knowledge that this is something very, very dangerous. So anyway, I think we should continue with the dangers so that people out here can really understand what we are talking about here, majorly the dangers, and then we proceed to what alternatives we can have. Okay, thanks.
So our viewers, we are still reflecting on what are the challenges that come with these pesticides. Actually, some of these other pesticides that I've been talking about says they have been categorized as fetal if inhaled.
Okay.
Fetal if inhaled. What that means is that when you inhale, like for instance, you've seen in our communities, a farmer is carrying a pump, the face is not covered, and is spraying, and then he starts inhaling. Surprisingly, this farmer might be carrying a baby at the back, or a baby here in front. So as the woman is spraying in the garden out there, she's one inhaling and the baby is inhaling. Now they tell you it is fetal if inhaled, meaning that it can even cause death. When you inhale it, it can cause trouble to you. You can even die. That's what, simply, this is, we don't want to complicate science. That's what it means. It is fetal. It is very dangerous when inhaled, meaning it can have effects on your organs. It can cause you organ failure. When you inhale it, you can even die. Now, when you go back to our communities, how are people doing it? Spray, the face is open, but someone is spraying a mango. He's spraying a mango, the chemical is bouncing back to the eyes, to the nose, to the mouth. Now, what do you expect? And he's carrying a baby. If he's not carrying a baby, there are babies or children who are also with their parents in the garden. They are all inhaling. As if that is not enough, you have neighbors who are actually breathing that air that is coming from your farm. Now, we have a whole environmental act which does not allow those things. So you see that if one farmer who is using one chemical that is actually fetal if inhaled is not only causing problems to himself, but to his family, to his children, to the neighbors, to the neighboring, all those ones are all affected. So if it is a human right thing, you are compromising the human right of the farmer who is using this chemical without adequate knowledge. You are affecting the health of the community members who are actually in that community inhaling this chemical, even animals, even everything. So that is how bad it is when we start allowing the highly hazardous pesticides in our country, and we know that they can be fatal if inhaled. As if that is not enough, we have those chemicals, highly hazardous chemicals, which have been categorized as toxic to bees. Toxic to bees. Now, these ones are even more than 47% of these highly hazardous. The ones which are toxic to bees. Now, what does it mean? If something is toxic to bees, from elementary science of primary school, we know that bees are pollinators. And what are these pollinators important for? They help us in agriculture to actually produce. Because if pollination doesn't happen, there is a risk of not producing. Now you are here busy telling us, okay, you have to produce so much and whatnot. Surprisingly, if the pollinators have died because of the chemicals, how do you want us to produce? Now a farmer will tell you that these days, even when you are planting beans, you have to be putting a chemical on the flowers so that they don't fall off. but you don't have the bees even to pollinate them in the first place because the chemicals have died. Let me give you a simple scenario. When we're growing up, I am not too old, but in my ages, however small they are, I would see a swarm of bees bare every 2 weeks. A swarm moving from Kasangati to another location. You just see bees in the large number and they are moving. When did you last see a swarm of bees? So you hardly see bees now flying in a swarm. Why? Because probably the usage of chemicals has either relocated them, they have decided to look for better settlements, or they have died. So we cannot start pretending on things that we even know scientifically. We need to be careful when it comes to these highly hazardous pesticides. So others are toxic to bees, meaning they're also toxic to other organisms in the soil. You remember those days when it was raining? As soon as it stops raining, you see worms coming from the soil, all over the worms. When did you last see a worm coming from the soil? So somehow it is because of the misuse of agrochemicals that actually those microbes, those soil living organisms have actually died or relocated. And so you need to use a fertilizer to make sure that, because now what was used as fertilizer or opening the soil for aeration have been killed by the too much chemicals. Now, others have been classified as highly toxic to aquatic organisms. You know what that means? That when these chemicals go into the water, and for instance, they find fish. Now, fish has two options, either to relocate to another place or to die. Now, I was watching a documentary of a whale which consumed the chemical and it went into the breast milk. And so when its young one was sucking, it also got contaminated. So it's a whole chain. So aquatic life, we destroy it or we kill it and etc. So highly toxic to organisms in the water is another categorization of these chemicals I just talked about. Now maybe the last one so that we can catch up with another. The categorization also shows us that some of these chemicals are reproductive toxicants. Now, what does it mean? You see, the challenge is us coming here and speak a lot of science, which our local person may not get. Reproductive toxicants basically means that when I eat food containing a highly hazardous pesticide, and it goes into my body, it can cause toxicity to my reproductive system. What is this reproductive system? It enables you to give birth. It enables you to urinate. You see those roles. Now, it means that if our people start having contaminated food, which have chemical compounds that meet reproductive toxicants, it means that men will start having their games and nothing happens. They are just there. And then you see so many people now coming with the mulondo and what, coming with all these reproductive challenges. This also means that women may actually fail to conceive, or if they conceive and they become pregnant, they may have challenges of pregnancy, what we say, the poor pregnancy outcomes. You produce a child and the child is having those challenges. So being reproductive toxicants means that we need to make sure that we protect the reproduction of our people. Otherwise, people will stop giving birth normally. People will start having pregnancy outcomes that are funny and are not healthy. And I mean, we have a saga of things. Now, when did we reach in here? Why should we reach a point where highly hazardous pesticides are allowed in a country which has a law? It has a law, it has all these regulations are there, it has a board, it has a steering committee. Why is this happening to us? Why should it even be on a register? First of all, I mean, there's a lot of mess that we need to clean up, and we don't need to pretend around confusing the community. Do you know that recently there was a study and it showed that they took samples from people, blood, urine, and sweat. Do you know that chemicals, these ones I'm talking about, some of them were present in people's urine, in people's sweat, in people's blood? Why should these chemicals be in your blood?
Wow.
Yeah. Others have been found on food. For instance, you've seen the tomatoes you are eating. Very endowed with macrozeb on top there. And the professor comes out and tells you that it's not dangerous. This is suicide. So I mean, our dear viewers, we can do better. And I think our calling as civil society has remained that the government of Uganda, through the Ministry of Agriculture, should the right word, should actually regulate the chemicals that are coming in the country.
must.
should build the capacity of people who are using these chemicals, should make sure that they do continuous inspection of where these chemicals are sold.
Okay.
They should make sure that they sensitize us, the consumers and the farmers and the users of these chemicals, on how well these chemicals can be used. For instance, if a chemical is supposed to be used 14 days before harvest, why then should someone come and put it in the market? But we have a market master, we have a market inspector, we have all these guys. Why? So we should expedite the process of assuring that these chemicals are well regulated and they meet the standards, and actually they are the ones that are supposed to be used. The moment the chemical enters the country and it is registered, my mother will use it because they assume that government has approved it. But I know that issues of corruption are responsible for our challenges. These multi-million companies who that are making the chemicals, if they can bribe a member of the committee or whatever, why wouldn't their product come? So the issue of corruption is killing us. And mind you, you're not killing consumers only, because you're also a consumer, you will also go. This is the truth of the matter. So we need to do a lot of awareness raising. We need to do a lot of regulation. We need to do a lot of inspection. Government has to do a lot to make sure that the population is safe. I am telling you that if the human beings are dying, it means the birds are dying, the animals are dying, everything. So the biodiversity, the ecosystem will be altered if we don't take any interest. What can we do? Many things. We can do many things.
Yeah.
For instance, government of Uganda has come up with a policy on organics. Now the question is, how much is the government investing in organics? So it means that we need to promote organic agriculture, where people go back to our elementary way of producing food with the science of bio-fertilizers, bio-pesticides, because we can make them locally. For instance, if we have Naro, why can't Naro do research other than doing research in highly hazardous pesticides? Why can't Naro do research in organics? By the way, we even have farmers who have advanced. They have the science because they have lived here for 80 years or so. And they have done these pesticides, the biosolutions that are working on their plants. Why don't we support them to make sure that we scale up those organics? Because when we have a policy, it's not even a bill. We have a policy on organic agriculture. But how are we implementing it? How are we scaling it? Mind you, we don't have a law on GMOs, you know that.
Yeah.
But we have the one on organics. So meaning that the government is basically saying, I think organic is the way to go. But how are we promoting it? How are we supporting organic farmers? How are we supporting local scientists to do research on organic products so that we can have these organic things work? And they will work. I know they will work because this is science. Two, there is an issue of agroecology. Agroecology is you're producing food on your farm with the minimal or no use of chemicals, but you are using the ecosystem. So for instance, on the same farm you have birds, chicken and whatever, you have goats, you have pigs, and then you have crops. Whatever waste is coming from the animals is going to feed the land and produces manure and whatnot. Then you're producing, then you have forestry there, you have agroforestry, you have fruits and what. Then you start having birds in there. All of those are mechanisms that worked in the early 1980s, 1990s. We used that. In your home, did you know a chemical? But weren't you producing a lot of food?
A lot. Yeah.
You would even produce food to a level that even the bananas will ripen on the stalk. So what went wrong? Now someone confuses you. These days you cannot produce a bean without what? No. Why are they changing? Because we have polluted where the microbes were that were supporting us in agriculture. Right. So our request would be, can we invest in agroecology? Can we support our farmers as they do organic or agroecology to produce food? Because we can do it. For one, agroecology is providing a diversity on the farm, but also diversity on the plate. So you are handling two things, nutrition and environment. Now, when the ecosystem starts coming up well, the environment thrives, the people thrive, people don't fall sick, people become healthy, you close Mulago. Or you have minimal numbers there. But can you imagine that this government is very interesting? They have noted that the cancer cases have increased. In the budget 2025-6, already the framework paper is out. they have added more money to the Cancer Institute. Because we know that since we are continuously adding the chemicals, more people may fall sick. So we need to increase the budget. Why do we increase the budget for cancer when we can actually prevent it? So in other words, we need to be logical, and we think on how best we are going to support human beings to actually thrive and benefit from their rights, the human rights that we keep talking about. Actually, if it were possible, people who are importing highly hazardous pesticides, they should even now be in Rosira. Anyway, so there are many solutions. If not organic, let us go agroecology. If not that, then there's also other methods that we call, for example, integrated pest management. It's another model. Farmers can be trained on integrated pest management, and they use that to make sure that we minimize as much as possible the chemicals. By the way, in Uganda, we have organizations. Sukuma Uganda, Kulika Uganda, we have Rusidi, all of those organizations are here, making sure that they are producing alternatives to chemicals, but are they being supported? We even reached a point of saying, why isn't ministry certifying organic products? Certify them so that these guys even can export. Because they have them, they have the solutions, they have the science. Why don't we support them? If government of Uganda is limited with staffing, let civil society go and support government to actually create awareness. Have you ever seen in our villages how a gentleman is carrying a pump, and the pump has chemical, and the chemical has overflown, and the man is naked and is spraying. Now every time he's sweating, the chemical is entering his skin. Why? The farmer doesn't know what to do.
Actually, that is the question I want to ask you.
Yes.
Are consumers aware of the risks associated with these chemicals?
Who has told them?
Okay.
Whereas it is mandate of government to tell them, for you at your age, have you ever had anyone talk about these things?
No, they defend it actually.
Exactly. So it's an issue of awareness. People are not aware. People are not informed. Now, these chemicals have been branded in all sorts of things. When civil society starts fighting, let us say glyphosate, then they change the thing. They call it Roundup. When you attack Roundup, that now they have changed it, you've mastered it, you want to talk about it, they change it. They call it something else. With the master, whatever it is. So the nomenclature has been changing in response to the civil society, because we know these things. We are junior scientists, so I know that when our senior scientists are there, we know these things. So why can't we be supported to create awareness, to build capacities of people? By the way, we would even ask ourselves, is the Ministry of Agriculture having potential or capacity to actually detect these things? You never know, it might be the issue. Do we have laboratories? Because the Act, the Agrochemicals Act 2006 provides that we must have a laboratory fully fledged to handle the issue of pesticides. It's a very thorough document, but I do not know where the problem is. What went wrong is what I don't know. So we need a lot of work. We need to sensitize the masses on all media platforms, on all radios, in our villages. Why should we go for PDM and during the PDM sessions we are not talking about these chemicals? Why should we go to a barrio? I hope you've been to the barrios in our areas. You're at a barrio, the LOC1 talks about PDM. The LOC2 talks about PDM. The LOC3 talks about PDM. Even the LOC5 talks about PDM. The RDC talks about PDM. Even the MP comes on the Kazindala and talks about PDM. These are 7 people talking about the same subject matter at the same funeral rite. It means that they probably don't have the content. Because why should the 7 of us talk about PDM when we have issues of malnutrition, when we have issues of cancers, we have issues of pesticides? Why can't people be organized that, okay, if 2 leaders have talked about PDM, the remaining talk about, guys, let us properly use the chemicals. Buy chemicals where they're supposed to be bought. These are the chemicals we need to buy. Maybe that capacity is not there. So we need to build the capacity of our leaders to understand these things. I am yet to think that I should even meet the president, I think, and I talk about this subject, because he might not be informed.
Wow. I see time has started hitting us very, very hard. Maybe you can give us the last shots in this regard, and also your last message to the viewer. Yeah, so our dear viewers, we want to appreciate you surely for listening in and paying attention to this critical subject. But I want to call upon us. 1, the government of Uganda, regulate the chemicals as much as we can. Regulate them. 2,
make sure that if a chemical has been expired, they expire, they have a period of time, take them off the market and ban them. If it were possible, by the way, government of Uganda must ban highly hazardous pesticides. If we don't ban them, they will keep coming and people will keep using and people will keep dying. As the civil society, let us do more advocacy. We don't want to deceive people. We need to do a lot of advocacy around this subject. Let us also support government to create awareness to the people. Let us build capacity of the government, capacity of consumers, capacity of farmers, capacity of everybody to make sure that we understand this subject. If it were possible, we even need to build the capacity of the media to make sure that the media, who is the fourth estate, have an understanding of this subject and so they can help us in sensitizing the masses. So I think as the Food Safety Coalition, as Consent, as our colleagues of civil society, we were quite a number. We're going to do a lot of work. I know Siatin is there. I know Pelham is there. I know that we have Caritas. I have seen we have ESAF. All those organizations. I know that also we have Sefrot working on issues of human rights and food.
Yeah, sure.
I know we have Fiani out there. We need to put our energies together to make sure that we advocate for the safety of our food. That is our culture. Food is our culture. Food is our sovereignty. And so we need to fight for it so that we survive in this environment, we live longer, and we have better children, we have better productivity, etc. I think the last bit that I wanted to tell you, Europe will send us pesticides, for instance, to improve productivity. Yeah?
Okay.
Now, when we improve productivity, we produce big tomatoes. We send them to EU and they bounce them. They say that they have chemicals. But who gave us the chemicals? They are the ones. So, ladies and gentlemen, allow me to end with this. I know next time we shall expound further, and I will be always willing to come and share information with the rest of our members.
All right.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. He's called Mr. Bernard Wambale, and he's the programs manager at Consent, and it's quite interesting information that he has really delivered to us here majorly concerning our health. Yes, we do take in things majorly, but the big call could be those also who are dealing in there, making sure that it reaches the final consumer. You have a retail shop with these chemicals. Do you know the danger you're bringing to society? So I think it all beats back to our personal responsibility so that we can see how safe we can be in society. Anyway, my name is Luke Majumba, and I want to appreciate you for joining us here today, and we're powered by Protea Hotel by Marriott in Entebbe. Please have a lovely day.
Issues at hand, powered by
Protea Hotel by Marriott Entebbe. Comfort and luxury at its best.